So talk to me about just winning that championship and the process, especially going through the bubble and everything, and the excitement of it all.
Yeah, well, the bubble definitely made it a little different. And it wasn't necessarily okay. So obviously the whole season was different, but
Mhm.
the championship itself, it still felt like, a team on this journey and the process and the ups and the downs. That all felt the same. With, of course, we were dealing with COVID, obviously social unrest, and what we were doing in the WNBA was happening. But once we got to that final moment of winning, the biggest difference was the no fans.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
really what made it. Yeah, you really start to realize just how much they play a role, like in the emotions of it all, the highs
Mhm.
and lows of a game. But then when you won, it was no like explosion. We still celebrated as much as we could, and I always say the best part about winning, two things: one, that night, you
Mhm.
can never duplicate that night. It's always
Yeah,
the best night. And then the off season, like, I'm a champion for the next like 6 months. This is amazing.
nobody can take it from you.
Exactly. So you just
Was
you,
it
you start to soak that in.
was it weird partying with masks on and 6 feet from each other and trying to hit them with the champagne from that far away? Was that very difficult?
We were in a bubble, so the beauty was I got to hit people with champagne without their masks on.
Up close? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just right to the face.
That is so conservative.
So conservative. Well, yeah, also what's exciting too is you and Megan getting
Yeah.
engaged too, right? So
Mhm.
walk me through this whole excitement of this. Obviously, I'm a lover by nature, and Jeff, you know, one day maybe you, but
Yeah,
Sue,
someday we're hoping. It's like the Peloton. It's all in the future for me.
who's we, Jeff? Who's we? But
The
anyways,
Oh,
mood
man, a
board.
special someone.
yeah, exactly. But Sue, talk to me about you and Megan. Obviously, y'all's relationship and just that feeling of getting engaged.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't think being engaged was going to make me feel different. I felt like for a long time with Megan in a good way, like it felt like forever. We talk about things like for in a forever kind of way. But then I have to admit when the moment actually happened and like I mean, so this is the ring. So she basically had slipped a ring off her finger and was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's the only one I have. Here, just wear this." So we don't really have official rings yet.
I didn't know that was
Um,
allowed. I might get engaged
yeah.
after all. I didn't know you could do that. I thought you
It was
had
it
to
was an
buy a big
impromptu
expensive one.
proposal. Yeah, it was an impromptu proposal, so we'll give her the pass. We'll give her
I
the
love it.
pass.
Well,
But it does. It feels different. It feels like a little more. I don't know, just
like so,
official.
I remember when C and I got engaged. Like, there's nothing better than saying like the word fiance. You guys like use the word fiance like a lot. Like
Yeah,
it's like one of those
yeah,
things. It makes you feel special, doesn't it?
a little bit. I feel grown.
Yeah, you
That's
feel
really
like
what
you're
it is. I'm an
mature. You
adult.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool feeling for sure. Well, so listen, Jeff, you got another question before I kick you off of this thing, and before I get cooking with Russ here and
I'm
start diving
excited
this
to
question?
listen to you two cook. That's what I'm excited to do.
Yeah, so Sue, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go one on one, me and you, talking about greatness, legendary success, just everything you've done over your career, really highlighting you and just everything you've done, and just obviously you've been a great friend, you've just been an inspiration. So I really want to pick your brain on a lot of things and let our fans, Danger Talking, your fans really know who you fully are. So we'll have some fun here. So Jeff will hop back on here in soon. But so
I'll be
Sue,
back.
obviously you were born in New York State, right? Where were you born exactly?
I'm from Syosset, New York, which
Hmm.
is on Long Island, so a suburb of New York City.
So were you always a fan of UConn growing up, or did you always see them play basketball, or how'd that come about?
Like, yes and no, more no than yes, but there was a little yes. There's actually this story that my intramural team, so we'll call it like fifth grade,
Hmm.
my coach, he had like some connection with the St. John's women's team. And so he took us to a game
Yep.
and we were kind of going to be, not kind of, we were the halftime show. So, you might go to a local
Yep.
team's play and then like they let kids run on the court at halftime and mess around. And they happened to be playing UConn that game. And it's one of those things where had I never gone to Connecticut, I don't know that I would have even connected it. But that was one of the first times I saw like high level basketball, college level basketball being
Hmm.
played. And it happened to be UConn. And it definitely stuck in my head. So then you fast forward, 10 or so years, and it's kind of ironic that that's where I ended up going.
It's kind of crazy. When you were young, like I have this distinct image of my sister, for example. When I looked out my window, we had this window, and I look out. We had we stayed in a little cul-de-sac, little corner of the end of the road, and there was a basketball hoop. My sister was 4 or 5 years old and doing reverse layups with my dad, and that's a fine memory that I have in my brain about my dad and my sister's relationship, and just how my sister started loving, basketball so much. And when can you take me back to when you were young and when you really started falling in love with basketball? Do you have like that image, that moment in time when you were really young, and you really could go back and say that was the moment that I started learning the game?
I mean, there's actually, I feel like I just had 5 different moments kind of
Mhm.
rushed to my head. It was a sport. So soccer and basketball are my first loves, but there was always something different about basketball. And it came pretty early. I mean, my mom, there's an ongoing, story in my family, like legend. My mom had to lie to like the camp down the street to get me in. I was in like kindergarten, you had to be in
Mhm.
second grade. She was like, yeah, she's in second grade. But right away, I wanted to be in the mix, whether it was locally in the park with the kids in my neighborhood, whether it was that camp, and then finally when I joined teams. But I think the one moment that really sticks out was I joined my first AAU team, which, times are definitely changing with how important AAU is. But for me, that was like AAU was it. That was your ride or die team. I was with the same team pretty much my entire, AAU existence. And that was when you like went to the big competitions. That's when college coaches watched you in high school. So
Mhm.
I went to my first AAU tryout in 5th grade and I made the Long Island team. And we went to a tournament and we lost to the Queens team.
Ah,
But the way it
uh-oh.
worked was, yeah, and this was to go to nationals. And AAU nationals, I'm telling you, was like
Big deal.
biggest deal. And I was upset. And then the coach comes up to my dad and is like, "Hey, we're allowed to take guest players. Would your daughter want to come with us?" And like I knew it in the moment, but looking back, the minute I joined that team, it changed everything. Because now all of a sudden basketball, like, well, first of all, being selected as a guest player, it made me be like, oh, I must be pretty good.
So this is your MJ moment of, when you're in high school, middle school. This is your MJ moment right here,
Yeah,
basically, right?
it,
Just
it
telling me.
literally changed everything. Had
Mhm.
I not played for that AAU team, who knows what happens.
Yeah. So did you talked about soccer and basketball.
Mhm.
Were you better in one when you were younger? Like, were you actually better in soccer, or was basketball like, man, I was dominant in basketball when you were young?
Good question. I think I was pretty good at both. Like
Mhm.
good enough where so I ended up choosing basketball, like solely basketball after like going into my junior year of high school. But up until that point, I was getting college letters for both sports. So I was like pretty even. I was
Yeah.
pretty even. Yeah.
So take me back to the decision of deciding UConn.
Yeah.
What was that moment
I almost
like?
went to
What
Stanford.
Oh, you did, huh?
That was on my
Everybody,
short list.
everybody hear that? Stanford won today. Actually,
I know,
beat
I
UCLA.
saw
That was a good game.
it.
But take me to that decision between even having to decide between UConn and Stanford. Obviously, you're from the East Coast, but
Mhm.
you know, making a decision like that, to pursue obviously basketball, to try to go for your dreams and everything else. That's a big decision. So take me to for every young kid out there who's listening and making that decision. What made you decide UConn in that moment for you? And I'm sure some other kid wants to hear, how that can help them.
Yeah, so the short answer is that's really where my heart was telling me to go.
Mhm.
That's the short answer. There was just something about I was drawn to it, whether it was, the fan support they had, which at that time was unprecedented. They were sold out every game, whether it was when I finally got to campus, like being around the team. Of course, the coaches plays a huge role in that. Just there was just something about it where I felt it just felt right. And I started there because if I rewind back to the start of the process, schools like Stanford, and then my third school was Vanderbilt. Those schools kind of like crept in on UConn, and now all of a
Mhm.
sudden I was seeing this other world, and Stanford's a great example in California. Palo Alto's beautiful. I mean, honestly, looking back, it's kind of crazy I didn't go. Like as an
Did you take a
adult, that's
visit?
where, yeah, yeah, I visited.
Oh yeah, it's tough now.
Yeah.
The fact that you went all the way out to Stanford and visited there, and I was
Oh, I
jealous of my
know.
sister when she took her visit, and I got to go out there and see everything. I'm like, this is where you go to school,
I know.
like.
I was like, there's a lot of palm trees. What is this place? It's like magical here. As an adult, that's where I would much rather live there than
Yeah.
Stores, Connecticut. Like there's nothing going on in Stores. And it got tricky at the end of my process. And for people, when you get recruited, it's like phone calls, it's
Mhm.
letters. They try to like wine and dine you a little bit. You take your visit, and then at some point you're making this decision. And at the very end, I remember one of the final conversations I had with Coach Auriemma. he was just like, oh, like, tell me what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And I was like, well, I'm like, my heart is telling me Connecticut. It always was. It really was always, that's what showed up. But I was like, but some things have crept in, and my head is kind of telling me, maybe I need to look at these other schools.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally was just like, we were on the phone, and he was like, well, I hope you follow your heart. Like, let me know, and hung up. And I was like, wait, what? Wait. But in all honesty, that was the best advice in that moment. Because even my parents, my parents are huge into academics. And my dad was like, are you sure you don't want to go to Stanford? Like, this could set you up for life. And I was like, yeah, there's just a pull. And so I think the moral of the story is there are definitely times when things can get confusing, but usually your gut, your heart, usually that's telling you what to do.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.